Hi, and we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Marketing Adventures with Carmel, where we bring you some amazing people, just like my guest today. Uh, Amazing people that are business owners and quite often exceptional entrepreneurs too, who have overcome some hurdles to build their business successfully. So, if you're watching this on social media, please make sure you give us a thumbs up. You ask any questions that you have. Just make sure you tag me, even if you're watching this afterwards. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you'll be alerted every time we have another one of these interviews. So, my theory is, why reinvent the wheel? Let's talk to the people that have already had success in the area that we need to move to. Because as entrepreneurs and business owners, we want to build our business to the stage that it actually sustains us. And we know it can be hard. There are some mistakes we make along the way, but if we can learn those tips, tricks, and insights from people that have already done it, then why not? I'm Carmel, I'm your host, and today we have the amazing Darlene Hawley. Hi, Darlene.
Hi, Carmel. How are you? It's so good to be here.
I am awesome. Thank you. And you're joining us all the way from Southern California. How amazing is that?
Yes, sunny California, though it's a little gloomy today.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll let that one go.
We will.
So, today we're going to be talking about how to get the sale by using your story. But let me just actually introduce you properly, Darlene, instead of just throwing it in there. So, Darlene is a speaker, podcast host, personal branding, and online business coach who shows ambitious and heart centered coaches, experts, and leaders how to create a profitable online business. So she's going to be talking my kind of language. It's all about being online while making space for yourself, your family, and by speaking up and sharing their story. So one of her key areas is sharing your story in a way that gets other people to want to work with you and obviously leads to a sale. Her genius is showing entrepreneurs uh, in business, kind of 2 years plus, into how to deepen their business foundation and go after the visibility. The thing about it is, guys, we all know if you have a business, if nobody can see you, if you can't market it properly, well, then you have a hobby, you don't actually have a business. So that they can share their message with the world and attract, that's a whole new word, attract their ideal client. So apologies, this is what happens when you're live, guys. If you stuff it up, you stuff it up, but that's okay. So Darlene, thank you so much. I'm really fascinated about how we can tell our story in a way that leads to a sale. But before we do that, how has Darlene ended up doing this? Like, well, what's been your journey to get here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Carmel, for asking that. My journey was, I like to say it was different, but it's unique to me, right? Each of us have a unique story that was part of our journey that led us into starting our businesses. And mine happened to be that I was a teen mom. So I was 17 years old and I was pregnant my senior year in high school. And I had my oldest son about 4 months after I graduated high school. And I found a career in retail management pretty quickly after I graduated high school. I worked my way up inside of what I call big box retail. You might be familiar with Best Buy. And I worked for Best Buy for about 9 years. And I just had this itch, this yearning for something different. I knew I wanted something different. I liked the work that I did and I enjoyed it in so many ways, but part of it was very overwhelming and stressful because I was a single mom and I was trying to raise my son and I was trying to, do a great job at being a mom. And I had the mom guilt when I was at work. And when I was at work, I felt like, or when I was at home, I felt like I should be at work. So I just had all these this inner struggle for myself for how I wanted to show up and what I was doing. And I just kept feeling like there's got to be something more out there. There has to be something different. And like a lot of people, I sat with that for a really long time and I didn't do a whole lot about it. I just kept feeling like I should do something, but I didn't know what the heck to do. I was like, I have a good job. I'm making good money. it's not that bad, right? Like
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
of us, my parents were
Just
not
put up with it.
yeah,
Just deal with it. Yeah.
my parents weren't entrepreneurs, so I never really thought too much about like going out and starting my own business. And if I thought about switching careers, I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Like, I don't know what I would want to do other than before I was pregnant in high school. I had originally planned to go to San Diego to become a marine biologist and swim with Shamu. I wanted to swim with killer whales. So that was like as far as my like dream thought process had been.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm probably not going to do that. I don't actually know that I want to get in the water with a killer whale at this point. There was a lot of things that happened.
Especially when you have a child, it kind of
Over the years.
changes. It's
Yeah.
not just about you. Yeah,
I was like, I
yeah,
probably shouldn't be swimming with a giant whale
yeah.
while I'm a mama. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then unfortunately, I lost my mom in a tragic car accident. It was 20 years ago, this past July. And during that time of grief and really like figuring out like how short life truly is, and that I knew I wanted something different. I was going through like that whole process of losing my mom, who was my best friend, and still knowing that I wanted something different, that I finally realized like life is too short for this, Darlene. Like you cannot keep living a life that just feels mediocre and it's just okay. Like you're destined for greatness. There's got to be something different you can do. You can have some of that. I don't love the word balance, but I was looking for like a little bit of balance, and what I call harmony is the word I use now more. But I wanted to be able to have a little bit more harmony in my life. I wanted to be able to be at home with my son when I wanted to be home with him, and I could go to work and not have to feel like I was just struggling back and forth with that. And so during that time, I really did a lot of soul searching, and I decided, okay, it's like time to put myself out there. Let's see what else is out there. So I built a resume and I started applying to different places. And one of the first places that I talked to was a business coaching franchise. And I was like, this is a little over 15 years ago. And I was like, I have no idea, zero idea what a business coach is. I was like, but when I read the job description, I was like, ooh, this sounds kind of cool. It actually sounds a lot like what I've been doing in retail management, HR training, development, leadership, the coaching piece. I just didn't call it coaching then. And so as I went through the job interview process and figuring out what the heck a business coach was, I was like, okay, this is my calling. Like I've literally been the person that my friends in junior high and high school would come to if they had questions or needed someone to talk to. And that was like my favorite piece of my retail management role was, coaching and developing my team. So I bought a franchise and became a business coach. And I've been doing that for a little over 15 years ago. And it was definitely not easy. There was lots of ups and lots of downs in those beginning days, as most of us as entrepreneurs figure out. We realize like, okay, we're really good at like the customer service piece. For me, that was like I ran the front of retail stores. So I knew how to service my customers. I knew how to give them what they needed. When they walked in the door, I could take care of whatever, make them happy. They were good. And then flipping into the entrepreneurial role, I was like, wait a minute, like I have to go find the clients. Where the heck do you find customers at? Like they don't just walk into the store anymore. Like you have to go out and search. And so I had to figure out that whole marketing journey and all that. But that's kind of like the beginning part of how I became a business coach, is just not feeling like I was happy and that life wasn't quite what it wanted to be. And so I kind of set out and found what I was looking for. And
that's often it's often where things do change. It's like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but we keep progressing forward. And I heard something yesterday, I think it was, the difference between, an entrepreneur and another business owner, if you like. And the difference was that an entrepreneur will take responsibility rather than saying, oh, it's that fault, it's that fault, it's that fault, I didn't succeed. They'll say, well, okay, I've got this idea, it didn't work that way. Well, let me see how it can work this way. And they keep going. So you're correct. It's not easy. If people had told me this entrepreneurial journey, the pitfalls that were in it on the way, I'm sure I wouldn't have started.
It's not for the faint at heart, right? It takes a lot of elbow grease. It takes a lot of rejection and failing and picking yourself back up and trying it again and doing it over and over again. But that's what makes us resilient, and that's what really shines us up and makes us marketable and gets us in a place to where we are able to be visible and are able to share our message with the world and do the work that we love. It just takes a little bit of time. I definitely thought like you did. I was like, oh, this is going to be super easy.
Yeah. Well, my background was hospitality. So, like you, it was like, man, you could come into my restaurant, my bar, whatever. I knew. And I was the person that dealt with everybody's complaints quite often. And people would say, how do you fix their complaints so quickly? Man, I knew that upside down and inside out. But then you become the business owner. And even though I had progressed up, so I was involved in the marketing for other businesses a bit. When I came to do it, you're so right. It's like I was an employee. Now I was the business owner that had to go and look and find the business, not just say, ta-da, I'm open, here we go. It was like, oh my God, no, it has to change. And I don't know about you, but I did the into work, back out of work, into work, back out of work, which people deem as failure quite often, because I needed to get more money to keep progressing and learning and doing whatever it was I had to do, because I wasn't ever prepared to let this go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes too important. It's kind of like, I've committed now, I have to keep going.
It's like it's my fifth baby because I'm a mom of four, and then my
Right.
business is like my fifth baby.
Yeah, it becomes like that. And people say, what are you doing? And I've shared this in lots of interviews. Like, I teach people now how to make promotional videos for their business so that they can stand out. If you had told me I was going to make videos 4 or 5 years ago, I would have laughed in your face and went, mate, you've got the wrong lady. I don't know what you're talking about. But through that progression is where we kind of let go of some of the stuff that isn't our genius, if you like, isn't what we want to be doing, isn't what we're passionate about, and more than anything, isn't lucrative, that because other people need to want what it is you have too.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So tell us about the importance of sharing story, because I know and you know, but just for listeners, sometimes you get people that go, oh, I'm just going to tell you my story, and they start just telling you their stuff. But it's more than that. It's telling your story with a strategy, with a purpose, understanding that your story is parallel to their story. So they can live vicariously through hearing your story. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, for the most part. I think one of the things that I identified probably, I'd say 2 to 3 years after being in business, and once I realized that my messaging was not clear and that I wasn't really connecting with people, and that people knew who I was and that I was a business coach, they didn't really know what to do with that information. They weren't sure how to refer people or what to do. They're like, okay, that's really cool, Darlene. Like, awesome. Like, you're a business coach.
What?
And I was doing a lot of networking when I first started my business 15 years ago. It was, most of my business was built on the ground, networking, going to, chamber events and Rotary clubs and women entrepreneurial groups and different things like that. And I found that the more that I started sharing my story and telling people a little bit more about me and the work that I do, and like making it a little bit more personal, that people started to connect the dots a little bit easier. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I'm like, I wasn't doing that. I'll be 100% honest. Like, in the beginning, like, people knew who I was, but it was like surface level. Like, they didn't really get a chance to know me. And then so I kind of just started sharing more stories. People got to know me at a deeper level. They felt more connected to me. They felt like they actually started to see who I was and what I did. And it made it easier for them to start referring business over, or they were raising their hand and leaning in and like, ooh, like, tell me more. Like, I need some support with that, Darlene. And so that was kind of when I had that aha moment for myself. I was like, all right, I need to share more of myself and more of my stories. And I need to stop trying to be like every other business coach that I was seeing. Like I had shared, I originally started for the first 3 years, I was part of a franchise that I had got trained through. And all the business coaches there were wearing business suits. They were carrying like leather briefcases and doing all those different things. And I never really felt comfortable when I was going to networking events. I joke that I was like a little girl playing dress up in her mom's closet. Like, I just felt like I was playing dress up. I didn't feel like I was being me. And so I started just dressing a little bit more comfortable, wearing more dresses and like clothes that felt like me and not like I was playing dress up. And that helped some, because then I was a little bit more authentic. I felt like I was like, okay, I can just be me, let people see me for who I am. I'm sharing more stories. I'm asking lots of questions, engaging with people, telling them more of the pieces that, that I hadn't told before. Like, in the beginning, I was mortified to tell people that I was a teen mom. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a business owner. What if they judge me? What if they, think that I'm, like, who would do
less
that?
than.
And
Yeah,
then it's crazy. Like, as I started telling people, that I used to work 60 plus hours a week in retail management, and I was a single mom, and I was, felt guilt when I was at work and guilty when I was at home, and all those different stories, people would start coming up to me and going like, oh my gosh, Darlene, I'm so glad you shared that story. I was not always a teen mom. Sometimes it was, I was a teen mom, or sometimes I was a single mom, or it was sometimes like, I'm not even a parent, but I feel that same way. Like, I used to work 60 plus hours a week in my job. And I remember that feeling of feeling like just exhausted at the end of the day and not sure whether I was coming or going. And so I just I realized like how important those pieces were. And so I think it allowed me to start stepping into being myself, being more uniquely me. I wasn't blending in as much. Like, I always joke that it's like the vanilla ice cream, right? Like, we're in a sea of vanilla ice cream when we're showing up, sounding the same, doing the same things, talking about the same stuff. Or if we see somebody else that's in the same industry as us who's doing a masterclass, or they're on podcasts, or they're writing newsletters, or whatever they're doing, and we try to do it exactly like they're doing it because it looks like they're being successful, we blend in so much. We don't have a chance to stand out. And I'm like, okay, I need to be mocha almond fudge. That's my favorite ice cream. I'm like, I need to stand out. I need to be a little bit different. And so I think when we just allow ourselves to show up and be ourselves, the way that you dress, the way that you talk, the way that you show up in a networking event, or if you're on stage, or if you meet me for coffee, or if you meet me on a virtual platform like we're doing today, like, I want you to know the real me. I don't want it to be any different. So that like one day, Carmel, when we get together in person, because that's going to happen one of these days,
one day,
like, I want you to go, oh my gosh, Darlene, like, you're exactly like who I felt like I met when we were virtual. And maybe I'm shorter or taller than you think I should be. But other than that, there's not a big difference. And I think that's the piece that's so hard in this virtual world, is sometimes we show up as who people think we should be, not who we truly are. And that just does us such a big disservice. Like, I've met people that I met virtually at first, and then I met them in person, and I was like, I'm like, not quite what I expected. Like, those dots don't connect.
A mismatch. Yeah. And as you say that, I'm remembering being in I went to an event where I was kind of like a crew member, a support member, and somebody came up to me and said, oh my God, you are the exact same in person as you are online. And I was like, oh, it's like the highest compliment, because, as you say, I am. And sometimes I forget, like, we're here on an interview now. Sometimes I forget that we're on an interview because I go, yabba. And it comes across as more natural. And that's why I structure these interviews that we don't have set, questions or whatever, because I want to actually have a chat with the person. And I want other people to see that exactly that we're not polished, perfect, shiny, friggin' diamonds. We're a bit in the rough sometimes. And I think that's okay.
Yeah. Like, I stumble over my words all the time, whether I'm in person, speaking on a stage, on a video, like, that's who I am. And I used to worry, like, when I would record videos for the content that I create for my community. And I was like, oh, I should edit those, or I should fix that because, I messed up, or I should record this 36 times because I messed up 35 times, and I have to have it just perfect so that it looks amazing. And, I have my face is in the right pose and all those things. And then I was like, but wait a minute, Darlene, like, you do that in person. Like, so why would you edit yourself when that's you stumble, I say, sometimes, like, I'm not going to take those out. It's not so authentic to who I am.
Because I did a live on Monday morning. I often do a walk and talk on a Monday morning. My phone fell out of the case and fell to the ground, and I picked it back up. And then at the very end, I hadn't realized my battery was really low. And at the very end, I went, bye for me. Oh, no, I can't press it off. I'll turn it off in a minute. And I was like, but that's the truth. That's what happens. Like, stuff happens, and we have to let it be okay. So in my mind, it helps other people to see that it doesn't have to be perfect.
It makes us relatable.
It's still okay. And it's still okay. So if you were, again, I want to really hold in on the fact that it's not just about getting online and going, poor me, this is my story, blah, blah, blah. There's a structure to telling your story, and especially when you're telling it in a way that leads to sales. Now, guys, I'm going to put a disclaimer in here. We're not talking about pushy sales. We're not
No.
talking about anything like that. Remember this, and studies show this. And I think in the US it's 125%. And in Australia, last time I checked, it's something like 119. People will spend 119% of every penny they earn. It is proven, studies have shown it. So they're already going to spend that money. So if you have something that solves their problem and you know that you come from a place of authenticity and trust, well, why not give them permission to spend it with you?
Yeah.
So it's not
Absolutely.
about push sales, but it's about being relatable enough that if they need something, that you're saying, well, here's the action you can take if you'd like it. So I just wanted to preface that, because sometimes people go, it's manipulation and it's this, that, the other. The thing about manipulation is we manipulate all the time. You manipulate your kids and say, if you sit there for another 5 minutes, you manipulate your boss or your employees in hey, if you do this, you get a bonus. Isn't that manipulation too?
Yeah. Yeah. And
in its essence,
Yeah. And I think the important thing too, when we think about like the sales piece to our business, is we have a solution to somebody's problem.
Yeah.
And we're building relationships. We're not going out and doing like the icky, sleazy, slimy car salesman-y type of approach. We're building relationships. Like 100% of my marketing is building relationship. Like I want to build a relationship with you. And there's other business coaches that are out there that do similar work that I do. Like it's just a known fact. I don't think of them as competition, because I'm building relationships. And if someone is come into my sphere of influence, they like the way that I'm talking, they like the content that I'm talking about, they see the problem that they have, and they see that I might be the solution to it. When they're ready, which might be 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, 2 months, or 2 years even from now, when they're ready to buy, they're going to remember, okay, I've been following Darlene for a really long time, and I like her approach, and I like her style, and I like how she teaches. I'm going to come back and talk to her. I don't have to worry about the competition, because I'm just building relationships with people. I want people to feel like they know me and they see me for who I truly am. And if you have two people, if you have two apples and they're the exact same, like they offer the same service, right? They're an apple. The one that you know better, like you can't really know an apple. I don't know why I'm using this analogy, but we're going to go with it. But like if people know that apple and they've gotten to know it, and they're going to go with the person that they know, like, and trust before they would go with somebody else. And that's what I try to do in my community, is I just want to build a place where people can come into my sphere of influence. And I just had a client last year that had been following me for 6 years before they decided to buy. They knew what I did. They knew how I worked. They weren't ready yet, but when they were ready, they raised their hand and they reached out for a clarity call with me. And I even asked them, I was like, how did you hear about me? And they're like, oh, I've been on your newsletter list for 6 years. And I was like, I have seen your name on there at one point, but I had never talked to them before. They had never responded to any of my emails. They had never replied on a social media post or anything, but they stayed around because they liked how I showed up and the content that I was sharing. And when they were ready, they were like, all right, like, you're my person. That's what I want when I think of sales.
I love that. That actually happened to me. It was 7 years. I knew this person in a networking environment, but 6 or 7 years beforehand. And exactly that. They kind of rang me up and went, okay, I knew one day I'd work with you. And I'm like, where the hell have you come from?
Yeah. And it's amazing, right? When you have people that just come along on the journey with you, because we're not, like you said, it's not that, pressure sales technique. It's not that bro marketing that it's referred to often as. Like, we're not like spinning like thousands of people through our funnel and trying to get one person to turn into a client. Like, I would rather build 10 strong relationships and 2 or 3 of those people decide to work with me in the near future than try to find the masses. I don't think that you have to have a crazy huge following to have a successful business. Like,
no. And I think it's very much, there's different strategies for doing it. Some of the big boys, as you say, might be doing it that way, but it depends on what your outcome is and what strategy that you want to use. So tell us kind of the structure of a story, or the top 3 to 5 tips of using your story in that way for sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a statistic that I want to share with you first that says that people are 22 times more likely to buy from you if you share story. and your messaging.
Right.
People
Wow.
connect really deeply at that storytelling level. It makes me think of like being a kid and going camping with my family. Like my best memories of those camping trips were sitting around the fire and just sharing stories with my family, telling ghost stories and different things like that. So think about how you could share just a little bit of story in every single thing that you do, whether you're creating a video or you're writing a blog post or you're doing a social media post, or if you are sharing your story about your About Me page, different things like that. Like find ways to weave story into what you're doing, because that's really what's going to make a big impact. And so I have 5 steps for you to kind of frame your story so that you can really use that to get more sales in your business. And the first step is really just a brainstorm. Super easy, right?
Yeah.
I just want you to brainstorm, like sit down with a piece of paper and a journal and a pen, and just brainstorm every single story, every experience, everything that's ever happened to you. And think back to like elementary age, college, high school, last week, all of those different things. And like just set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and write down every story that comes to mind and start to see which of those stories make sense for you to share with your community. You don't have to share every story. Is something that I'm a big believer in as well. We all have skeletons in the closet, and they don't have to necessarily be skeletons, but we all have stories and things that have happened that we're like, why would, there's a couple things you might ask, like you might just not want to share it. There might be like some trauma or some different things behind it where you just don't want to share it. And it doesn't have to be part of your open story for your business. And then you also just might have stories where you're like, this story does, like, it's a cool story, but it doesn't necessarily connect with where I'm taking my business or the type of content that I talk about. So step 1 is brainstorm. Step 2 is once you do that brainstorming session, there's 4 questions that I like to ask myself to identify if it's a story that I even want to share. So the first question is, what happened? So identifying what happened in that story. The second question is, how was I impacted in
I'm
this
writing
situation?
down the steps myself.
Yeah.
So
what happened? How were you impacted? The third question is, what changed for you because of how you were impacted? And then the fourth question is, what lessons did you learn through that transformation? And I think those are important questions to ask, especially if you're trying to uncover, like, does the story even pertain to my community? Is it going to make a lot of sense for me to share it? And another thing is, you don't have to share all the details with it as well. Sometimes I share a story and it's literally like 1 or 2 sentences from something that's happened. And I don't go into all the nitty gritty details because I don't have to. Like, people are going to relate to you because they hear your story and they're going to envision something that's happened to them in the story that you're sharing. So it's not even about you at that point, right? It's about what they're seeing and what they're picking up on from their side of the story.
I guess it's the ability to tell them enough that they can use their imagination and sit themselves into that situation. That's the idea of a good storyteller, that the person can be transported almost into that situation and go along with them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And then the third part is to pick 3 connecting stories. So one of the stories that most of us will tell in our entrepreneurial journey is just like our origin story, which is how, something typically happened, like you had a previous life. So for me, part of my origin story is that I was, a single mom working 60 plus hours a week, exhausted and overwhelmed doing the work that I did. And then I had another story happen, and that was when I lost my mom. And that's when I realized that life was too short and I wanted to do something else. And then the third piece to that is I went out there and started uncovering what it was I wanted to do with my life. And I became a business owner. So there's like 3 pieces to a story that you can share to introduce yourself, to connect with people. So I think it's important. Like, you might find that you have, 50, 60, 70, 100 stories, but you're probably going to identify it down to like those 3 areas. Like something was happening, a life event happened, and it changed, and now you're where you are today. Like, that's an easy way to kind of put your origin story together. And you can use that on your website. You can use that when you're being interviewed on a podcast, different things like that, because people want to know, like, what was going on, what happened, and how did you come to the place that you're at today? So that's one story that you can share really easily. And then I also like to take the stories that I have, and I like to do some market research, because remember, like I said a second ago, your story is not just about you. You have to look at who your community is, who are the people that are listening to you, and go out there and do some research. Get clear on who your ideal clients are. What are their big struggles? What are their pain points? What's their big desires? What's standing in their way of reaching the goals that they're trying to get to? And then what needs to happen to get them from going from that struggle spot to that desire or solving the problem to help them get on their way. And usually that's they're struggling with the problem and you're the solution to that problem. So when you go out there and actually have some conversations, you're going to be able to identify which stories are going to make sense for your community, because they're going to connect really easily. People are going to go, oh, I get this. Like, I can see myself in your story. It's resonating and I'm relating to it. And then all of a sudden they're going to be like, okay, I feel like I trust this person. They don't have to compete anymore because they trust you. They know you, they like you at that point. And then the fifth part is you just pull all that together. So you do the brainstorming, you ask yourself some really deep questions, you get clear on like the 3 connecting pieces of your story so that you can have like that starting spot. And then you take the other stories and put it in what I call a story bank. And I just have a document on my computer, and every time something happens to me and I'm like, ooh, this could be a story, I write it down. Like just a little bit of the details. And sometimes I use it a couple days later, and sometimes I use it like 2 years later, because I'm looking for a story to share with a blog post that I'm putting together, 5 tips to building a personal brand for your business. And I'm like, okay, what story could I tell? Because remember, you have to share a story in everything that you create for content. Like, that's my rule for myself. And that I teach my clients to, to make sure, like, okay, you have to have a story to go with this content. Don't just put 5 steps to building a personal brand as a piece of content. Like, share a story that drops into those 5 tips that you want to share that day.
Because I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. So I developed these 5 steps for myself. Okay.
Because otherwise, people might not remember those 5 tips that you share, but they might remember that story that you connected to, because they're going to be like, oh yeah, Darlene shared that story about that time when she did whatever. And they're going to come back to that. They're going to feel connected to it.
Yeah. And what was number 5?
Just pulling all the pieces together. So taking all those different stories, pulling them into a story bank, and identifying like where you're going to use them, when you're going to use them. And then you can take those stories and you can literally use these stories everywhere. Like I was saying before, you can put it, in a video, you can have it on a podcast interview. It can be, the beginning of when you're talking to a client. I share tons of stories about myself, my journey, my clients' journeys, just when I'm doing my one-to-one work with clients, because my clients typically connect better when they hear it from a story format versus me just telling them what to do and how they need to show up.
Yeah, because it's like, to me, when you hear a story, it's like you're giving them the pathway.
Yeah.
Rather than, here's my 5 steps. It's like, well, how do I even get on the ladder? It's like, well, hang on, here's the story around it. So it's like you're guiding them up to the first rung of the ladder. Because I've been there too. So come and I'll hold your hand and walk with you. So it's really very powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're not the hero of the story. Like, especially, we're supporting other people through their journey of life. I do it through coaching, and each of us has a unique path that we're supporting other people, but I'm not the hero. I'm the guide. Like if you think of Star Wars, like I'm Yoda, like I'm helping you through the experience. I don't want to be the hero. I'm not going to wear the cape and solve all your problems for you. My goal and my passion and my desire is to help you see what you need to see for yourself so that you can, build the confidence to show up and be authentic and be true to who you are, to put yourself out there and be visible and do the marketing things that you need to do so that people can see you and go, ooh, like I want to know more about this person. I feel connected. I want to work with them. Like I like their story, the things that they're doing. And so you don't want to position yourself as the hero, because I'm never the hero of any of my clients' journey. My clients are the heroes because it's their story. I'm like a guide, a facilitator through that process.
Well, if you look at Joseph Campbell's, the hero's journey, which is if you actually put it on top of any movie, anything, you can see the steps. So in one step of that is meeting the mentor.
Yeah.
So perhaps you're the mentor.
Yeah. Exactly.
In that point, it's meeting the guide and the mentor that will put you on the right way, rather than we also meet the tricksters and the jokers that try and take us off the path as well. And in this land of everything being, predominantly online now, it's sometimes hard to identify who the mentor and the trickster is.
Mm.
So because people can have a polished story, but it's about being able to really resonate with your ideal clients in a way that they do know, like, and trust you, because you're right, decisions are made on an emotional level. And when you know, like, and trust the person, you're much more likely to go with them. Absolutely.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think like I haven't called it as the trickster before, but I might start using that language, but because I love it. But like when you think about the people, like the influencers and the people that you watch, on social media, like some of them have huge followings. They have all these people that, comment, and I've been behind the scenes in a lot of those businesses, and some of them give okay content, and that's not as amazing as it looks like from the outside. And I also have been in some of those businesses where what it looks like they're doing versus what they're actually have happening is not the same. Like they're not making as much money as they say they are. They're not as successful as they would make you believe. And when you look from the outside, like it looks like this beautiful mirage, right? Like everything looks all shiny and pretty, and like they've got the Eiffel Tower and the sports car, or they make it seem like they have this huge community and this huge following. And then in reality, it's not always the case. So be careful. Like I think you have to really, check in and watch who you're talking to and build that trust with them, because not everything is what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I think it's quite key to be able to discern what's true, what's not, but also to understand the difference between a business that is good and a business that appears to be great is marketing. That's the only difference. Because quite often, and I'm sure you did the same, I trained as a coach many years ago. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, they trained with me. They're so much better than me. They're so much further ahead than me. What's wrong with me? Blah, 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 all that stuff. The truth was, when like that, I of course worked with some of them. I went in the back end and went like you, oh my God, I could do that standing on my head. And it wasn't just me. So I'm not saying, but the biggest difference was they were just bloody good at marketing. And I wasn't. I didn't know how to market myself. I was brought up in a culture of, you don't big note yourself. You have to, put others before you. So, of course, I couldn't have a big head. I couldn't be saying Carmel's great. So I would always let other people talk first. I would let their opinion come in. It could come from hospitality too, by listening to their complaints.
Yes.
So I didn't brag, if you like, about myself. And that's how I felt it at the time. And because I didn't know how to market, I was always on the back foot until I went down what I called at the time the painful learning how to market, and how to market in a way that's worked with me. Because like you, I didn't want to be doing the push, push, push. And I did. I showed up and pretended I was somebody I wasn't for sometimes, because that's what I thought I should do. But the minute I became more authentic, and the minute like that people would say you're the exact same online as offline, the minute I sat into myself and shared some of my story, that's when everything changed.
Yeah. You said something so important there that I think we forget. Showing up as ourselves and being visible in the way that feels good to us. Like, I think it's so important that we find the visibility strategies that light us up and allow us to really shine, because there's so many marketing strategies that you can do. There's so many ways that you can be visible and put yourself out there, but only a handful of them are going to probably work really well for you. And just because something works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me. And so when I try to do something that I see you doing, it might not work. I might fall flat on my face and get, 0 sales from it. And then I beat myself up and I'm like, woe is me. Like, I suck. I can't do this. I'm not worthy. I can't do all this stuff. And we start to tell ourselves all those stories. Yeah. But reality is we were just trying to do something that wasn't to our strengths. It wasn't something that excited us. If I have to drag myself out of bed in the morning to do something, it's probably not going to show up in a beautiful way. Right. But if I'm excited to record a YouTube video or to come on a show like this with you, like those things excite me. Like when I can just start talking and like get into a flow, who knows what I'm going to say half the time, right? Like it's not scripted. It's not planned. You get the real me. that lights me up. If I had to sit here every single day and, write everything, say, like, I do like to write occasionally. And if I'm in the mood, like, I love to do it, but it's not my main way that I like to do that. I'd rather record a video or have a conversation and just, see where the conversation goes. But when I pressured myself to write a blog post every single week, and that wasn't working very well for me. Like, I was like, I don't know what to write. Like, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
And then I gave myself permission. Well, you love to talk, Darlene. So your content each week could be a live video like this, or it could be me on YouTube, or it could be on a podcast, or it could be me speaking to somebody's community and, sharing a workshop or a masterclass. Those are things that light me up. So now I only focus on those marketing strategies. I don't torture myself doing something that I don't want to do.
I love that. I torture yourself. And, if that is something as your business grows that you need to, well, then you hire somebody to do that.
Yes.
I believe in knowing enough to know I don't like it, to actually then, but enough that you can explain to somebody else how you want it done and what needs to be done. And they can quite often do it faster and whatever than you, but you still know enough because, we get it. People are sick or something happens or whatever. You have to be able to step back in there if you really need to.
Yeah. You need to play to your strengths.
Yeah. But that's it. And I'm like you, I could talk. I think if it was an Olympic sport, I'd probably be a gold medalist at this stage. But I love these kind of conversations. And that's why I structure these interviews that are not structured, because if it was too structured, I don't believe we'd get the gold out of the people. And I want people watching this to actually really see how they can just be themselves and still be successful.
Yeah. Cool. It's so important, Carmel. Yeah. Like when we show up and we just be our unique, special, gifted people that we are, so much can happen. It brings so many people together. It makes us shine. It helps us do the work that we love to do, and we can get paid for that, which in turn gives us the ability to give back to our communities and travel with our families and do the things that we want to do. And it doesn't feel like work at that point, right? Like it just feels like we're meeting our soul exactly where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I've had some experiences as well in my life that have made me stand and go, what is this life all about? And one of the things I absolutely came to is we're not getting a big trophy at the end of it, So we're here to experience it and enjoy it. And yes, we may be growing our business or whatever we choose to do, and that's okay. But make it something that makes your heart sing too. It absolutely has to. Cool. I think we could talk about this forever, Darlene. So I think there may be another interview coming up, but that's okay. So, Darlene, if people want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that? Is that via LinkedIn or your website or both?
Yep, both of those are great. You can go to my website, which is darlenehawley.com, or my favorite social media platform is over on LinkedIn. That's really the only platform I spend a ton of time in. I am on Facebook and on Instagram, but if you follow my story, you will learn that my accounts were all hacked on June 30th, 2020. And so I lost all of my old accounts. I had to build new ones. And so I don't spend a lot of time over there. I realized how we don't own those platforms. So come to my website, connect with me that way. You can join my newsletter list and you can get some actionable steps. One of them being sharing your story from my website, and dive in, figure out what little steps you need to really move yourself forward, to build the personal brand that you want, to really connect with your dream clients so you can stand out. And like Carmel, like you said at the beginning, like to go so that you're not building a hobby, you're actually building a profitable business that's making you money, so you can show up and do the things that you want to do.
Absolutely. And it gives you more freedom to be more of you, to serve more people.
Yes.
And look, it's interesting you say about your accounts being hacked, because I've actually run a webinar shortly, and it's all about the surefire way to get your leads and sales off social media.
Yes.
Because I've heard of so many stories exactly like that, Darlene, that and some quite successful people as well, that have had their whole Facebook page, their personal page, the whole lot just gone overnight.
Yep.
Like literally overnight.
It's the number one reason that I teach my clients to grow a newsletter list, because we don't own those platforms at all. And as devastated as I was almost 2 years ago when my accounts were closed down and taken and hacked, and who knows what's happening with them at this point. The thing that I felt so good about afterwards was like, thank goodness I teach my clients and I listen to what I teach my clients too. And I actually grew a newsletter list. So most of the people that were in my Facebook community or on my business page, a lot of those people were on my newsletter list. So I was able to still stay in touch with them. And I had to pivot my strategies a little bit for how I was showing up. But I think of social media as like a place to nurture, not necessarily to attract those new people into our communities.
Yeah. Well, you can attract, it depends on where your avatar, your ideal client is.
Yeah.
You can attract them from there, but for God's sake, give them every opportunity to get onto your list. So whether that's a freebie, a free PDF, whatever it is, make sure that you are nurturing them onto your list so that you can actually add value there and they're more likely to see you. Yes, Darlene, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been my pleasure to chat to you, and thank you for sharing all your little chunks of gold within there. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Carmel. It was so fun talking with you, and I look forward to connecting with everybody and getting to know you.
Yes, thank you. And we will chat again. But for now, guys, remember, if you're on social media and you're watching this after the fact, put a question in below, just tag myself and or Darlene, and we'll make sure that we answer them. If you tag me and it's a question for Darlene, I'll hound her until she answers it for you.
Just let me know.
That's it. If you're on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button too, guys. But for now, it's bye from me.
Bye.